What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction. Back after a multiple year hiatus with more TV Mania. Big shout out to Seb, who reminded me that he had uploaded this album to the drive he shares with me, which is to say, a few years ago, I did the very first track, or I reacted to the first track on their, is it Board of Prozac and the Internet? I believe it's Board of Prozac and the Internet, right? Yes, their 2013 album. Oh, it's Board with Prozac and the Internet. But yes, we're talking about Nick Rhodes and Warren from Duran Duran, and ultimately this is a 2013 album, though I believe a handful of the tracks were recorded in the years preceding. In any case, yeah, this is, I guess, a one-off project. I don't believe they ever came out with any other albums, but yeah, I reacted to the very first track of this album, I want to say like 2023, and my plan was to go through it all, and then, again, I was starting other deep dives, and it just completely fell off my radar, but Seb reminded me about it recently, and so I now have the full album waiting at our disposal. So yeah, we're back with it, and we will go through the remainder of the record. The second track on the album is Euphoria. It's a single-word title. Obviously, Euphoria, the idea of a rich, enveloping, and thoroughly enjoyable, even utopian or idealistic type of positive feeling and environment. So in that regard, I do wonder if there's an irony or a sarcasm to the title, but without any additional context in the title, it is hard to get a sense for which direction it might be headed. But let's give it a listen and see what I can discern. This is TV Mania. Again, it is Nick from Duran Duran and Warren, their longtime guitarist, from their 2013 album Bored with Prozac and the Internet, and the track is Euphoria.
They are able to simulate the exact brain patterns, the grey world of reality.
Oof.
Euphoria.
Your expensive toy, you captivate my mind. I never answer telephones, don't like to leave my screen alone. Try to stand but falling in, no help from my new friend. Tangled strands of DNA explain the way that I behave.
Euphoria.
Floating through this fatal maze, I have no time to think. Don't wanna wake up in a world out of focus, fading in. Dilated pupil REM, I freeze a single frame from the life I used to lead before altered reality.
What a crazy tune. So, to the degree that sounded like Euphoria, it sounded like it's still going, a very psychedelic and intoxicated Euphoria. And while I wouldn't say it sounded dark and discomforting, it definitely wasn't bright and utopian and euphoric, and I would say a more straightaway sense, warm, inviting, and infinitely pleasurable. It felt more like we're in this maelstrom of someone's thoughts, which again are very psychedelic, inebriated. The whole track had this sort of faded, fuzzy sound to it, and definitely it had a bit of a like down-tempo trip-hop vibe, but with, again, a very psychedelic flavor or atmosphere to it. And I enjoyed, there were sounds they had energy and also some, percussive pop to them, and yet still the whole thing felt very hazy and foggy and a bit disorienting. We had multiple vocals with this euphoria, like saying euphoria, but with like this, vocoder, like electrified type of sound or effect on them. And then that lead vocal, I do wonder who that was. It sounds like a female vocal. And like I couldn't place it, but like the melody of the verses, which, they only were in at like, I don't know, half of the track, 40% of the track. But the melody of those like verse lines, it was reminding me of a Duran Duran tune. I can't place it, but I could like hear that melody in Simon's voice. So yeah, I mean, now I'm blanking on the lines that I caught, which is annoying because there were a couple of them I wanted to mention. But yeah, the melody and the atmosphere overall really just entranced me and hypnotized me to the point where now I'm failing to remember what the lines were that had, caught my ear and brain. Nevertheless, I am curious, like, why this is giving me... I mean, again, it's by members, or one official member and another longtime member, kind of? I don't, like, what was Warren's status when he was in the band? Was he ever considered, like, an official, like, member of the band, or was he always, like, a supporting musician in the way that, like, Dom would be considered in recent times, where, like, he does live shows with them, he's on their album recordings, but, like, has he ever been considered, an official core member of the group, or, I mean, like, it feels harsh, though, to call either of them, like, a session musician, because, again, like, contributing guitar parts to the album recordings and, touring with them and so on, I feel like it's more than session musician, but maybe short of, like, being, it's, like, Alan Wilder, when he first joined Depeche Mode, it was kind of this, like, is he in the band or is he not? Like, he's on the recordings, he's even doing some composition on the tracks, but my understanding is it was like a year or two before he was like, okay, yeah, he's an official member, and it was, even throughout his entire time with Depeche Mode, I think he was, sort of kept a little bit at arm's length relative to the other guys, so I just wonder, like, I'm sure fans, considered him, like, during the period when he was in Duran, to be a, you know, formal member more or less, but I just wonder, like, in terms of, you know, the internal dynamics, whether he was always more of like a supporting member rather than a like core member. In any case, it doesn't surprise me that this reminds me in some level of like maybe a Medazzaland era Duran tune, and yet again, like, something about that lead melody was really making me think like, man, I feel like I've heard Simon sing this melody. So yeah, either way, I enjoyed it. It definitely was a very, again, like, hypnotizing type of tune, and Euphoria at best, you know, feels like there's a nuance to the type of Euphoria. Again, it feels like a psychedelic Euphoria, and one that you're sort of in whether you want to be or not. So yeah, and again, even the voices with the effects had a bit of that feel. They were kind of like echoed at different points, and again had that sort of digitized sound to them. So very interesting tune. Cool to get back to this album. Thank you to Seb for the material and the patience, and for reminding me about this. And as I said, I'm going to go through the rest of this. I think I do have like 2 Devils tracks left. Speaking of Duran Duran adjacent deep dives, so I'll try to finish off that particular deep dive soon. Let me know what you think of this, and I will see you next time. Peace.